I say about letting that stinking hippie in here? Yes, I said don't do it. What do you mean? She put it on. She was supposed to show it, not put it on. You've cleaned it. Good, because I'm going to clean you. Hello? Hello, how are you? Oh, I hope you're good. I have a new play for you. I have a new play. I have a play. It is Richard II. Yes, yes, another one of our history plays, because we all like the history plays with the kings. Yes, yes. But before we start our play, remember, you all have to go over to the shop and get a t-shirt. You can have Hal and Falstaff, or Romeo and Juliet, or Petruchio and Catherine, or Julius Caesar and Brutus, or the Milwaukee Family Players. And there's also books and other things, but mostly there's t-shirts. My t-shirts. Yes. So our play today, really good one. This one is Richard II. Yes, not to be confused with Richard III, which is actually the end of the big cycle that starts with Richard II. There are 6 plays in the cycle. 6 plays? No, 8 plays. 8 plays, because there's 2 Henry IVs, Henry V, and the 3 Henry VI, which we haven't got to yet, and Richard III. So 8 plays. 8 plays in the Henriade and the Margaret saga. Yes. Never heard it called the Margaret saga? Well, that's yeah, it is. It's the Margaret saga. Anyway, we're doing Richard II. We're going all the way back to the beginning, because we've done Richard III. We just haven't done the 6 plays. We'll get there. We'll get there. But Richard II. I like, you know how I like monarchs. Yes. Well, Richard II is king. And Richard II has been king since he was a very little boy. And this play opens with the death of the Duke of Gloucester, one of Richard's uncles. Now, the Duke of Gloucester has been murdered, and Henry Bollingbrook, who is the king's cousin, yes, that Henry Bollingbrook, has accused Sir Thomas Mowbray of killing Gloucester and treason and blah 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 blah. Now, Richard is kind of behind all of this, but that won't come out till later. But he is sort of trying to break up this, I'm going to try and make you be friends. Richard is a little bit weak in the power department, because I can tell you, my dear Richard, but he knows how this would go. Yeah, he wouldn't have got himself into this kind of problem. Anyway, that's not this Richard. This Richard is a little bit unsure of how to go forward. Now, before I go any further, I have to point out that Richard II is not a massively performed or popular play, partly because it is a little bit different to the other plays in the way that it works, which you will find out as I go through this, but But the other reason is quite different, is the whole thing is in verse. Blank verse. Rhyming. Blank verse. Now, the Milwaukee family players try. They try and they try and they try my patience. Because this play can either work really well, or it can sound like dumpty-dumpty-dumpty-dumpty-dump. So keep that in mind. That's probably why you haven't heard this play very much. It's also a play about a weak king, which is another thing that gets it, well, has been less popular historically, let's say. I don't think even the Globe played it very, very, very often. And it is very different to a lot of his other plays. So, but anyway, so Richard is having trouble, and neither Mowbray nor Bollingbrook will back down. And so, okay, you're going to have to fight a duel. And they appoint the time for the duel. Now, all of this, this takes quite some time. This is actually quite a long first act. So, between this argument and the duel, we get a little scene with the Duke of York and the old Duchess of Gloucester, the widowed Duchess of the Duke, and they're talking about the state of the country and blah de blah de blah de blah. But they all believe, they're all very much in, well, the king is the king, and the king is appointed by God to right, and we just have to bear this patiently. But this is not exactly what the younger generation seem to think, which will cause a major clash. So we have the time set for the duel, the dueling. And this all seems to be going to go all fine, all well, until Richard suddenly throws down his scepter and calls a halt to the whole thing, very irregular, and decides, right, that's it, I'm gonna banish you both. So he banishes Sir Thomas Mowbray for the rest of his life. He will never be allowed back. And he banishes Bollingbrook, his cousin, for 10 years. And John of Gaunt, his uncle, who is actually his uncle of Lancaster, is very upset by this, and Richard says, oh, well, you lose 4 years of your banishment. You're only banished for 6. But John of Gaunt is old and sick, and he knows he's never going to see his son again. So they're banished. And then we go a little bit later to the court. And in the court, Richard is getting ready for his Irish wars. Apparently Ireland is having a kerfuffle again, generally what happens when you colonize a country. The people don't like to be colonized. You got to keep slamming them down, So he's got to go over to Ireland and slam down the rebels again. Notice I'm wearing my rebel tartan. Yes, so he's got to go slam down the rebels again. And he's wondering, where do I get the money for this war? Where are we going to get this money for this war? And the word comes that old John of Gaunt, he's not Sir John of Gaunt, he's John of Gaunt, old John of Gaunt is dying. And, well, with his son out of the country, and him being my uncle, maybe he'll die before I get there and I'll just take everything. But John of Gaunt is a tough old thing, and he is determined, if he's going to die, he's going to tell the king what he thinks. Yeah. And so he tells the king, you have, when the king arrives, you've been wasting everything. You are not behaving like a proper king. This is not good. You're being very, very bad. And the king is like, You do remember I am king. But so he's not going to be chastised by this dying old man. He's not at all. And then John of Gaunt is led away, and word comes back, oh, he's dead. Oh, okay, so everything he's got we're taking, and we're using that to pay for our Irish wars. Yes, and so Richard goes off and leaves his uncle York in power. Now, in power in his place. Now, the other earls and whatnot do not like this, because he has just gone and overridden natural law that is that when a father dies, that their sons should inherit what they have, because that's their legal right. Even if they're in exile, like Bollingbrook is, they should still be able to inherit, because this makes you a tyrant. And the Earl of Northumberland is particularly upset. And do we remember the Earl of Northumberland? Yes! The same one. The same father and uncle of Hotspur are at this moment very annoyed at Richard for going and doing this. And so while Richard is out of the country, he's off on his Irish wars, Bollingbrook, who has been told of what has happened, is now coming back. He is not supposed to come back because it's less than 6 years, but he's going to come back. Bushy and Bagot and Green are advisors to the king and not very well liked, but they're also still in England, and they're talking to the Queen when news comes of what is happening. And York tells the Queen what's happening and has no idea what to do about this, because he doesn't have the money or the whatever to get to defences together, because the defences are all off with Ireland. Nobody was expecting this to happen. They should have sort of taken notice of this, but they didn't, because this is the nature of Richard's court. It's full of yes men. Yes, sire. Yes, sire. Yes, sire. Yes, which is fine if you're me. Not a problem in the world if you're me. Human kings kind of need someone who's a bit more, push back a little bit. Me, on the other hand, no. People don't say no to me. Anyway, they're off to sort of like, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? They're all a bit losing their heads. Meanwhile, Bollingbrook returns, and Bollingbrook is met by Northumberland and other various earls who've been put out by what's happened to him and his father, and they are there to give him support. Now, they go and they encounter, now, because these three are all pretty much identical, I have to remember which ones it is, Green and Bushy. And Green, they capture Green and Bushy. And Bollingbrook comes to York, and York is not happy. York is like, you are a banished man. How dare you come here? And Bollingbrook says, look, uncle, because they're all grandsons of the same king. Uncle, I only come for what is mine. I just want that. And he's got men and the populace behind him, that old Uncle York is like, well, I'm afraid you've probably got a point. Hate to admit it. Would really, really hate to admit it. But, you got a point. So he doesn't oppose Bollingbrook. Bolingbrook's Northumberland, I think it's Northumberland, takes back Bushy and Green and has them executed for leading the king astray. So far, So far things are not too terrible for Richard. Things are about to go down the toilet very quickly. Richard's Welsh fighters, hearing that Richard has been lost in Ireland, rumours that Richard has been lost in Ireland, decide, no, we're not going to wait for him, we're clearing off, we're going home. We're not really into it that much. I mean, it's just an English king. We personally, we'd like to go rebel like the Irish, which they do, which is why Owen Glendower in the next one, which is why he's fighting a war on 3 fronts. So, you know, again, colonisation, not a great strategy there. Not for stability. But anyway, the Welsh decide, you know what, if he's dead, we're not sticking around, we're going home. We're going home. So they go home. Richard does arrive, and he arrives with the Duke of Ormond. He arrives with, I think it's Bagot, and he arrives with the Bishop of Carlisle and a couple of other different people. And he's very displeased to hear that his Welsh troops have disappeared, and that Bollingbrook is back, and that his uncle has let him. Now, Richard is a very, very changeable person, and he is quickly appraised of the situation, and that Bushy and Green are dead. That's not good. And he very quickly sort of freaks out. But Ormond and the others are able to convince him to go to Flint Castle. Now, there are a whole bunch of castles in this, so if I forget some of them, I forget some of them. But there's a lot of moving about without a lot of stuff happening. Now, you will have noticed also that this does not have a comic subplot. This makes it really odd. One wonders what Kemp was doing if with no comic subplot. I think Kemp was reduced to being the gardener who we haven't met yet. But there is no comic subplot in this. This is all serious, serious, serious. Not even like, you know, not even like in Henry V with what's his name and what's his name, the Welsh one, and Captain Glower and Captain Llewellyn. No, there's not even Captain Glower and Captain Llewellyn, not even that kind of thing. It's all very serious. Very serious play. Didn't write another one quite like this. I can sort of see why. It's not really his style. But it is a very serious. There's no Captain Llewellyn, no Captain Glendower, no really obvious jokes. Can turn lines into jokes, but not really obvious clowning. It's a very serious play, which is probably why it's all in verse, which is why the Milwaukee players murder it. At Flint Castle, again, Richard is having a little bit of a meltdown, and Northumberland is like, okay, well, what are we going to do? You know, how are we going to approach this? He's, you know, and Bollingbrook is very, you know, he's the king. I have what I want, but we're going to respect the fact that he is the king. I'm going to ask for what I want, what I am due, what is my right, but we are going to respect that this is the king still. Which is very important because the Duke of York, you know, reminds Northumberland, you missed off the king's title when referring to him as just Richard, and if he should have heard that, you would have lost more than a title. He would have foreshortened you by a whole head. So, it hasn't hit this quite the depths of despair that Richard has rather sunk to. But he's already pretty much he's losing it rapidly. he's losing it rapidly. Because he's not very popular, and this has never happened before to anyone that he has ever heard of, and but I am God's representative. So he's having a bit of a freak out here. Now, he does meet with Bollingbrook, and he agrees to return Bollingbrook's inheritance and to make Bollingbrook his heir, which he's not particularly happy about, because he has previously made the Duke Aumale his heir, and Aumale is still loyal to him. Aumale is the son of the Duke of York, and I believe he is the father of Mortimer, which is why the York and the Lancasters, so this is where the Yorks and the Lancasters come in, because Bollingbrook is the son of the Duke of Lancaster, so he's the House of Lancaster, and Mortimer and Aumale are from the Duke of York, from the line of the Duke of York, which is why Richard III is of the Duke of York, and yes, and Henry IV, Henry V, and Henry VI are the House of Lancaster. That's where that comes from. I know, it's really confusing. And there's so much of this. So, the Queen, after Flint Castle, hears from she's not happy, understandably. Because she's like, well, what on earth is going to be my position in the world? And this is not good. But she overhears gardeners saying that the king is being taken to London, and that he is so down in his fortunes that it's only a matter of time before he is dispossessed of his crown, that he is deposed, which Richard thinks is like absolutely appalling. The Queen is horrified to hear this gossip being spoken, but Richard barely believes this, and yet is forced to believe this. In London, Northumberland is trying to get to the bottom of who killed their uncle Gloucester, Gloucester, the Duke of Gloucester, who killed Bolingbroke's uncle Gloucester. And Aumale has been accused by Bagot, because Bagot is still alive. They killed Bushy and they killed Green, but Bagot is bargaining from his life by pointing out Aumale is the one responsible for having employed Sir Thomas Mowbray to kill Gloucester on the orders of the king. And they decide they're going to put this to the test until they hear from the Bishop of Carlisle that that Sir Thomas Mowbray has died. He's died while crusading in the Holy Lands. And it's like, well, we'll work this out some other time. We'll work this out later. Richard is now, I'm not sure, but at some point in this scene, and I'm not sure if it's before or after Richard refuses or relinquishes the crown, I think it might be before, but the Bishop of Carlisle. So the Bishop of Carlisle absolutely gets the shits with all of them and tells them all that what they are doing is nothing more than treason. It is against God, it is against the natural order, and he is not having it. So Northumberland arrests him for treason. Richard hasn't got a lot of friends at the moment. So Richard is sent for, and of course, if Richard can do one thing, it's ceremony. Now, even though he does not believe that anyone has the right to take his crown, if he's going to give it up, he's going to do this in style. He's going to do it in style. And so he comes in and he does, yes, relinquish the crown, but not without making himself absolutely centre stage and absolutely the most important person, and shows exactly how a king should behave. Something that Bollingbrook has no idea how to do. He outclasses Bollingbrook in the manner of his resigning the kingship in a way that Bollingbrook can never manage, which is why Henry IV is never the really major central regal figure in the Henry IV plays. Even though it's his play, ostensibly, it's Hal. It's Hal learning to become a king. Those plays. Bollingbrook is, well, sort of an accidental king. He's a bit of a king like a tortoise on a post. He's a bit like Macbeth. Not really 100% certain how he got there. Not really 100% certain about what to do once he's up there. And not really certain how he's going to get down out of this. Because things seem to have spiraled. He came back for his legacy. He did not come back to depose the king. Things have somewhat spiraled out of his control, thanks to the Earl of Northumberland, who will then see himself as a kingmaker and cause an awful lot of trouble in the next play. You see? So, I think I would like to take a pause here and just mention, with all this talking of deposing, how very, very offended we are by depictions of my husband as some kind of vengeful, nasty creature who wants to take over from Father Uncle Zeus. Now, let me tell you a few things about my husband. My husband is king of the dead for a very good reason. Also, might I add, king of the dead. There are only 3 kings. There are only 3 queens in our world. There's Father Uncle Zeus, who's king of the heavens and all things, and Auntie Hera. There is Uncle Poseidon, who is king of the seas, and his auntie, I think she's Amphrite. I can't remember. I don't see them very often. It's been a long while. No, I think Amphrite was someone else. Might be Auntie Amphrite. I'm not sure. But anyway, we don't see her a lot. And then there is my husband, Hades, king of the underworld, and me, queen. Means I get to sit on the high table. Now, just because my husband does not go topside does not mean he is plotting anything or unhappy. My husband is, okay, my mother is a very loud, very noisy person. All of upstairs is very loud and very noisy, and there's bickering and there's fighting all the time. So, my husband is a very, very shy, very introverted, very quiet person. He likes to spend a lot of time at home, play with his dog, the big one with 3 heads, playing fetch with Cerberus. Oh, it's good fun. It's good fun. He'd throw the demon, and he gets the demon, and he'd throw the demon, and he gets the demon, and he'd throw. Yeah. They end up a bit torn to pieces, but we've got plenty of them. Plenty of them for Cerberus to slobber all over. That's the whole point of them. But anyway, My husband does not go topside. He was the one who was eaten first. Well, the one who came back after being the first one to come back. As in there were other siblings before him that got eaten, but he's the oldest one who got thrown up. Very traumatic. So, you know, I mean, he just doesn't really want to go topside or deal with it, a lot of that. He finds it very triggering. I'm just going to say, finds it very triggering. You try finding good mental health support in the underworld. Or frankly, among any of my family. My whole family needs family counselling. Anyway, people keep insisting on coming down here to try and liberate us or do this or do that, and then you all come up with stories topside about how my husband is trying to take over from Father Uncle Zeus, and it's like it couldn't be bigger lies. So I would like you to stop it. Father Uncle Zeus is perfectly good at his job. My husband doesn't want his job. It's incredibly stressful. Quite frankly, we have the most solid marriage in the entire family, and I don't want to get that messed up by giving him all that stress. So quit it. Now, talking of wives, Richard is being transported from the Tower to Pomfrey Castle, and the Queen is waiting to meet him on the road. And Richard meets her, and they are able to say farewell. She is returning back to France because she is a French princess, and he is going to prison. The Bishop of Carlisle is apparently still out, and he is plotting with Aumerle and other loyal noblemen to rise up against Bollingbrook, King Henry. And Aumerle is part of this plot, and the Duke of York hears about it. The Duke of York hears that he gets it out of his son that his son is plotting against Henry. The Duke of York has just rolled over and accepted that Henry's the king now, so I've got to obey the king. This older generation, see, told you, they just roll over. Much like the Duchess of Gloucester, rolled over. But the Duchess of York is like, what on earth do you think you're doing? You think you're getting another son out of me? Are you kidding me? We're too old for that. I'm not having my son killed for treason. You are not going and telling the king. And he is like, I am going to tell the king. And she's like, no, you're not. And they fight. And eventually York gets away, and he is going to tell the king. And the Duchess says to Aumerle, who's actually been dropped down from Aumerle to the Duke of Rutland, so he's been demoted because he's a supporter of the old king, go to Bollingbrook and beg him. Confess and beg pardon, and I will follow you. And so very quickly afterwards, we have Aumerle. I'm going to use Aumerle because he's used as Aumerle all through the play. Aumerle comes to see Henry. Henry is, okay, what's going on? And he says, beg pardon, please pardon me. And he's like, is it something you've done or something you intended, haven't done. Okay, okay. Calm down, dude. Calm down. I'll pardon you. And then, then tell me what it is. But the Duke of York is, let me lock the door. And so he goes to try and lock the door. But the Duke of York comes in, and the Duke of York is like, he's a traitor. He's terrible. It's oh my goodness. And Aumerle is trying to say, you know, look, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then the Duchess of York comes in. And this is where it gets all sort of a farce. So this is where, and I can't really see that Kemp was the Duke of York though, but this is where, like, you know, Shakespeare sort of went from this really serious play to this complete farce. And it's like, oh, look, your Shakespeare is showing. You were trying to be one of the university men and now your Shakespeare is showing. Because it really does look like, oh, look, your Shakespeare is showing. And so you get this really farcical thing of like 3 different people all squabbling over this, and eventually Henry is like, oh, enough! I pardon him. Here is the letter. Right, these people. Okay. Ha! Next we have that Henry has been overheard saying, if Richard was dead, it would be a big relief. You know, much as the previous king had said of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas à Becket, who will rid me of this meddling priest? Who will rid me of this king? You know. And when that one happened, who will rid me of this meddling priest, that it was said, not really necessarily meaning it, but some, like, you know, PTSD'd crusading knight came, overheard the king and went and killed the... Yeah. And it's sort of the same thing here, which makes me sort of rather suspect that that's what Shakespeare wants you to think of, is the... Yeah, because then... So some knights are talking about, the king will be really happy if you go and do this. Okay, and so we now go to Pomfrey Castle, where King Richard is, and Richard is not having a great time of it. He's going a bit doolally, which is fair enough, because he's been king and now he's a prisoner in a castle, and not a very happy prisoner. Not a very comfortable castle either, so it appears. He appears to be in a dungeon. It's a problem. I mean, he was king. Respect. So anyway, he is visited by one of the palace grooms who wants to see him. And he's willing to see anyone because he doesn't see anybody except his jailer. He sees the groom and has a nice little chat with him. And then his jailer comes in and offers him food, and he says, well, taste it. And I dare not taste it. And, oh, good. Oh, goody. This is how it goes. And then 2 men come in and they kill him. Okay, he manages to kill one with his own weapon, but they overpower and kill Richard. And then, rest in peace, Richard. And then the knight goes and drags the body off. And then back at the palace, back with Bollingbrook. Bollingbrook has heard that the uprisings have been quashed, the rebels have been either killed or taken, and he's like, finally I get to enjoy being king. I may not have asked for it, but I'm going to enjoy it. And then this knight comes in dragging a coffin. What's in the coffin? Oh, your greatest fear, your majesty, thinking he's all, oh, I did the right thing, I'm going to be really rewarded. He thinks he's the cat that got the cream. And Henry's not happy about this. Henry is really, really furious about this, because it's one thing to take the crown, it's another thing to go and kill a king. And so the last thing that Henry says is that he's going to go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem to try and expiate the guilt of what he has gone and done. Which actually brings us round to the beginning of Henry IV, where he's still trying to go on that trip to Jerusalem, but it hasn't happened because there's been so many civil brawls in the country. So that completes the entirety of the Henriad. We've done it out of order, massively out of order. But we have finished the entire Henriad, and the next time I bring you a history play, it will be one of the Margaret Saga, the Henry VI, because we've already done the last play. So, until we meet again, bye-bye. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.